Well, 2020, the worst year ever, is finally coming to a close. Naturally, the year 2020 decided to inflict us with some truly awful films. So here's my picks for the 10 worst films of 2020. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comments section. Let me know the worst films that you saw in the year 2020. My list isn't the right list. This is just my list, and I would love to see which movies you had to suffer through. One more thing before we get started, there are some companion videos to this over on my Patreon page. I've got my biggest disappointments of 2020 and the biggest surprises of 2020. Join at any level and you can unlock those videos and many, many more. And let's get started. Kicking off our dishonorable list is Trolls World Tour. When the world locked down and every theatrical release was postponed for eternity, this was one of the very first movies to release on digital. Thanks, Universal, and as a $20 rental. The basic concept sounds like a fun and goofy spin on the hero's journey, but instead of being a send-up of epics, it turns out to be an oddly preachy film that can't even get its message straight. Clearly, it wants to be a movie about unity and accepting people. And then as soon as the story begins, it becomes clear that people who are different are dangerous. The movie is all about not breaking into groups over our differences, and as soon as they all unite, Poppy and Barb form a girls group. The movie simply can't decide what it's about. Poppy wants to prove herself as queen. Prejudice is bad. Cultural appropriation. Differences are important. Unity. While it can't decide what it wants to be about, one thing it certainly is not is good. Number 9, The Turning, a totally generic horror movie dropped into the middle of January to be forgotten. It's based off The Turn of the Screw by Henry James, which has been adapted many times before, including by Netflix in the year 2020. Here I am. But The Turning has absolutely nothing new to add to the story or to the genre. It's the same old spooky mansion story that we've seen many times before. Kiss me, baby, one more time. Every single plot twist is telegraphed a mile in advance, and all of it leads nowhere whatsoever. At a certain point in time while you're watching, you'll be thinking, where is this going? How are they going to resolve this? And then out of the blue, some new plot points are introduced, and then the credits roll. No resolution, just a bunch of dangling plot threads. It's as if they had a totally different ending that didn't test well, so they did some last-minute reshoots to try and fix it, and it really didn't work. The crazy part is that this movie started out as a passion project for Steven Spielberg. Why? Then he jumped ship to avoid being associated with this dumpster fire. Speaking of iconic directors associated with dumpster fires, next up, The Witches, directed by Robert Zemeckis, the director of Back to the Future, Forrest Gump, and Castaway. This is one of those movies that proved that sometimes movies just don't work. In the case of this movie, it's based off a beloved book by Roald Dahl. The screenplay was worked on by Guillermo del Toro. Zemeckis is obviously a world-class director. The scores from Alan Silvestri, the guy that did Endgame and Back to the Future and 1,000 other brilliant scores, and the cast have a bunch of Oscars and other awards on their shelves. That's about as good of a cast and crew as you can get, and this movie still sucked. Pretty much everything falls flat and doesn't work. Part of it is that I'm not really sure what they were even going for with this film. Whatever their target was, they totally missed it. So whoever they wanted to enjoy this film, it certainly didn't win any fans in my household. At number 7 is The Wrong Missy. Now this one starts off with a decent enough throwback rom-com setup about a miscommunication over technology, and then it becomes unbearable due to one of the most annoying characters ever put on film.
A really bad feeling about this.
It's a tricky balance when you center a film around a relationship relationship or friendship between two people where one of them is supposed to be overbearing and difficult. The trick to it is that you have to find a way to get the audience to like an annoying person and root for them. To draw a comparison to another David Spade film, Tommy Boy. Tommy, played by Chris Farley, does a lot of unbelievably annoying and difficult things, but the audience really likes Tommy because he's so good-natured and well-intentioned and funny. Therefore, we want him to succeed while he's doing all these shenanigans that sabotage himself. By contrast, there is nothing likable about Missy in the first half of this film. There's a sequence where she falls off a cliff, and I was actually hoping that she would die a quick yet painful death so that my pain and suffering of watching this film would end a little bit sooner.
Boy, that escalated quickly.
Then we have Fantasy Island. Blumhouse is an interesting studio because almost every single year they have some movie that cracks my top 10 or 15 favorite movies of the year. And then they almost always also have one or two movies in my bottom 10 of the year. And in the case of Fantasy Island, this should be an easy setup for a bunch of cheap thrills and chaotic escapism. It's all about people going to an island where their fantasies come to life. So with all the interesting and unique opportunities that this specific premise allows, what do we get? Two douchebags that want to go to a party and a guy that wants to be a soldier.
Not a great plan.
In and of itself, that would make for a boring movie. But as you move into the third act of this film, there's a series of unbelievably stupid twists and reveals that just defy all logic. They undermine everything that was set up in the previous hour of the film and just strains all credibility. If the screenwriters didn't care enough to set up the payoff and twists, then I don't care at all when they happen. Leading us into the bottom 5 is Capone. At first glance, this seems like an easy win. An Al Capone movie starring Tom Hardy. Yes! But then you realize it's about the last year of his life as he's stuck at home and his mind is rotting from syphilis.
Why?
And it's from the director of Fantastic Four.
No! God, please, no! No!
And it features multiple sequences where Tom Hardy poops his pants. The whole film is a tedious experience as essentially it's a formerly powerful man humiliating himself for 90 minutes straight, and then he dies. There's a bunch of plot lines, one of them involving Al Capone learning to wear diapers, but no real central plot for the film. I understand that this was Josh Trank trying to process through his own public humiliation as the director of Fantastic Four, but I didn't like it at all, and I will never watch it again. It's a charmless, unpleasant film that is frequently unintentionally hilarious. Number 4, briefly, this movie was actually the best movie I had seen in the entire decade. Granted, it was the first movie I watched this decade, and it was promptly kicked out of my top 10 as soon as I'd seen 11 films. This is an incredibly drab-looking, dull, and punishing film. The franchise is known for making movies with multiple unrelated plot lines centering around a house that kind of lead to some big reveal at the end. And when a movie does that sort of thing properly, it can be very rewarding as you finally put all the pieces together and see how it all makes sense and it was all related. And then you have movies like this that have no big twist, they have no big reveal, and nothing comes together at the end. You just go, oh, that was going absolutely nowhere whatsoever. And a big part of the problem is the movie reveals the ending at the beginning of the film.
Not a great plan.
Which means the story has no tension and it can't have a big payoff because we already know the outcome. The movie also gives all the characters these really depressing backstories, and then it brutally murders them, which in a certain way is kind of merciful because they only had to be in the movie for 20 minutes and I had to watch the whole thing. Real quick before I give you my bottom three, be sure to let me know your picks for the worst movies of 2020 down below in the comments section. Also, I've got a bunch of these end of the year videos coming up over the next few days. Tomorrow will be my top 10 movies of the year. Friday, I'll be doing my annual ranking of every new release from 2020 that I saw. And then Saturday, I'll be letting you know my most anticipated films for 2021. Third from the bottom, Antebellum, a pathetic and offensive attempt to copy Jordan Peele's Get Out, except without his humor, insight, or talent. It's a movie that thinks it's smart because it uses imagery from American slavery, has a bunch of thinly veiled allegory, references modern-day racial tensions, and has slow-mo shots. But in reality, the movie has absolutely nothing to say about its themes or important subject matter. Likewise, most directors figured out that the twist in this movie wasn't clever back when M. Night attempted it years ago. But at least when M. Night attempted this plot twist, he was doing something original and wasn't attempting to use it to communicate some important message. If you want to make a movie to tell a story that tackles relevant and important subjects, cool. But this feels like a desperate attempt to hop on a trend by copying Jordan Peele. And because of that, it's just gross and exploitive to me in some of the worst ways possible. The next to worst movie of the year, Artemis Fowl, a shockingly incoherent mess that I honestly can't believe legend Kenneth Branagh directed and Disney actually released.
And you blew it! You blew it!
One of the most important things a movie needs to do in the first act is establish the tone and the rules. And with this movie, it feels like every 7 minutes, a new plot line, a new tone, a new genre was established only to move on to something totally different. It feels a bit like they dropped the script right before they started filming. Oops! Put it together out of order, lost half the pages, and then used voiceover to cover up all the mistakes. The plot jumps all over the place. Characters appear and disappear at random, and it just feels like build up for a sequel, but has no payoff in and of itself. In reality, what happened is they shot this movie actually quite a while ago, and the studio just didn't think it was very good. So they did some reshoots and then they trimmed the movie to pieces and did voiceover with Josh Gad doing his Batman voice to fill in all the gaps. It's tough to know if they ruined an okay film through studio meddling or if they trimmed the film graciously just to reduce the amount of suffering that the audience would endure. Either way, the movie that they released is unwatchable. But the worst movie of 2020, Desperados. Call me crazy. Go ahead and call me crazy down below in the comment section. I don't mind. But I was actually looking forward to this film. It stars the actress that played Dahlia in Aladdin 2019, and I actually thought she did a really good job in that film playing off of Will Smith, so I was excited to see what she would do next. So where to even begin with this movie? The basic plot feels like a throwaway episode of Friends, except extended for over 90 minutes. Side by side inside of it, you have a bunch of feminist, sex-positive messaging combined with a lead character that's the most over-the-top, outdated stereotype of a woman in her 30s as she's irrational, emotional, and obsessed with marriage.
What a story, Mark.
Then you have this running gag throughout the movie about these awkward encounters between the lead character and this underage boy, all leading to the big payoff of this grown woman naked in front of this child. Another bit in the movie involves a dolphin jumping out of water, and I'm not joking when I say this or exaggerating, and the dolphin's penis hitting the lead actress in the face.
Boy, that escalated quickly.
Hilarious stuff if you think that pedophilia and bestiality are comedic gold. I'm not a total weirdo, so I wasn't laughing.
Is that like a personal attack or something?
If you were able to skip this one, you were able to miss one of 2020's cruelest plagues. Therefore, it comes in at the dishonorable number 1. If you enjoyed this video, I've got more of these end of the year lists coming in the next few days. Come back tomorrow for my 10 best movies of the year and more in the coming days. Thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies too much.